week. Gets me every time. Welcome to the Round the 4-2 Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Smitty. With me, as always, Drew, No Hands, Hannes, and Joe, Catch Flights, Not Feelings, Frick. What is going on, boys?
Hey, what's happening? We're live in San Diego, sitting at the airport right now. I feel like I'm on an episode of Star Trek. It's like really weird time. So if you hear any weird announcements, that's what's happening in the background. So apologies for the delay.
I was just saying, let's start there because Joe is in an airport. If you guys noticed, we weren't here yesterday. Hopefully some of you noticed. Otherwise,
what are we doing?
You don't miss us every week. But also you might hear some announcements come through Joe's end. That is because he is currently sitting in an airport. But shout out to Joe for even doing the show right now from the airport. Drew, you haven't said anything yet. What's going on?
I took offense that you said that I don't have any hands because if you throw the ball my way, it's not being dropped.
That was more so I knew what I was going to say for Joe, and I was trying to think of something for you that I could say, and I don't know why that's what came to mind immediately. So
I like that.
Look at this. We got my dude, Mechie the Goat is already in here already. Last week he was flooding the comments with questions. We love that. He said flex one of them, RB2, one of them. Montgomery, Carter, Jamal Williams, McLaurin, Renfro, Hardman, Jay Robinson, Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel, huh? He's a popular Round the 4-2 fantasy football guy this week. Drew and I both had him as a wide receiver waiver claim, the top one. Well, I don't want to say for Drew top one. He was one of his top three. Julio Jones was his top one. Where are you guys at with this question, though?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, right? So the way that they used Curtis Samuel felt very similar to how Deebo Samuel gets used in San Francisco. A lot of creative ways for them to get the football. On a side note to this, actually, if we're thinking about the QB play there, Carson Wentz was the third best quarterback last week. Like, where did that come from? He's only rostered in 16.4% of leagues. And to me, it's like, let's see where this offense goes. They invested pretty heavily in the offense. I mean, with Samuel coming earlier, McLaurin get the extension, and then you draft Jahan Dotson from Penn State, and it looked amazing. And then they haven't really even gotten Logan Thomas fully back up to speed after the ACL. So I do have a little bit of concerns about what that week-to-week utilization is going to be, but I do think that there's a good opportunity for that offense to really be clicking. And Carson Wentz is somebody that you might want to put on the bench and see what happens there.
Another waiver claim for Drew and I, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, so I think as far as like the running back play for this week, looking at the options here, I'm going to assume that that's Michael Carter. I thought he had a really strong performance, and I think if you are somebody that drafted Breece Hall with expectations that he's going to be doing things at the beginning of the season, you're probably not feeling too good about it. That being said, Chicago's offense did struggle in that monsoon of the game last week. I still have a lot of confidence in the volume that David Montgomery gets. So I would probably be playing him if that was my pick from the RB2 slot. And then from a flex position, I'm still going to take the alpha, the guy that they paid a lot of money to, just because he didn't put up the points last week. I think that McLaurin is still going to be your best option there on that front.
I am on board with both of those. Drew, do you have anything different?
I'm thinking here a little bit about the James Robinson play because I felt like he just looked really good, and I was shocked by that. But I think you have to just go with Montgomery. And McLaurin actually was sixth on his team in targets last week. He was behind Logan Thomas. I just think that you play him because there's no way they're letting $72 million go down the drain, and he's sixth on the team in targets. He's going to get a lot of work this week, and he's going to bounce back. I like both of those plays as well, Montgomery and McLaurin.
Okay. Jared, we're not acknowledging this. We're getting to the point where I think Drew wanted to block you from being able to comment. So Ricky Dunks is here. Start 2 of the 4. DJ Chark, Curtis Samuel, Darnell Mooney, and Bobby Trees. Man, Darnell Mooney broke my heart last week, but of course it was a monsoon of a game.
I have a lot of confidence in Mooney. If you look at just like in terms of stats of like, was he on the field? Was he not on the field? They only threw the ball about 20 times, and he didn't really have a lot of participation there, but he ran routes on 96% of the dropbacks. So he is the alpha in that offense. He's somebody that I think is actually a buy low candidate, and I have a lot of confidence in him moving forward. There's not really a lot going on in Chicago. I think I saw a lot of people panic drop on Cole Kmet as well. And I think that he could be like a viable play. I think Mooney is an easy choice there. I think out of the remaining guys, Drew and I were talking about this right before the show, but Chark seems to have settled into the number 2 target role for Detroit for the time being, which we didn't really know how that was going to shake out, which is bad news for Hawkinson owners. I'm going to go on mute now as we.
No, for me, Bobby Trees isn't part of this discussion. Darnell Mooney's the easy one, so then it becomes a discussion for that second guy between DJ Chark and Curtis Samuel. We mentioned what Curtis Samuel did in Washington in week 1. That's a guy that Rivera highly coveted coming over from Carolina. They paid him decent money in free agency to go to Washington. But DJ Chark did look really good in week 1 too. That's a bit of a toss-up for me. I'm probably slightly leaning Curtis Samuel just because if I'm going to have him as my top waiver wire guy for the wide receiver position over a guy like DJ Chark, I got to at least ride that for a week and be confident in what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling here to pick a second guy. I don't see that Curtis Samuel's going to get that same type of opportunity that he did last week, so I'm a little concerned about throwing him back in. I think that they're going to try to push the ball back McLaurin's way. Bobby Trees is a non-factor. Everybody writing up Treylon Burks, but he stepped up with 3 targets for 65. Bobby Trees had 1 for 13. He's not even being looked at. That offense just looked terrible. So,
yeah. Speaking of that, actually, with the Fritter Ticker going at the bottom there, Derrick Henry at number 10 for us, and I don't even know that both of you guys even had him in the top 10 because I know I had him at 10. I think one of you didn't even have him.
I didn't put my rankings in our.
Okay, so
our notes.
Drew, I don't think you had Derrick Henry.
I had him at 10. Drew did not have him in his top 10 at all.
Okay.
I was number 1 with him last week, but that offense just looks so bad. You expect him to move the ball a lot better against the Giants, and it just didn't happen.
He had a couple of runs that got pulled back because of stupid holding penalties. So I think that he'll be serviceable, but if he goes down, I know one of the things we talked before the season started is that the Tennessee Titans offensive line dramatically dropped in rankings, preseason rankings relative to last year. So if he goes down, I don't know if Hilliard or whoever else may step in a backup capacity would even be able to get to 60% of what he's doing. So I had him handcuffed for a little bit, just like a bench flyer, but I'll probably be moving on from that and trying to find some newer pieces. But I think out of those two, I probably would end up taking Samuel to get back to the question. I think that the Detroit offense is going to be variable week to week. And it seems like they're letting Samuel really get creative with the ball, and he looks really explosive, which is a couple years removed from those bigger injuries that he had. So I like that one a lot.
Okay. So that's 2/3 of us with Curtis Samuel, assuming that Drew is going with DJ Chark. He was split on the two.
I'm split on the two. They're both in the second highest slate in terms of the line for this week. I think there's going to be points put up on both sides. Samuel probably has a better chance at getting more opportunities than Chark because I still think Amon-Ra is just going to eat away targets. And I think that they're going to try to spread the ball around TJ Hockenson a little more, as we talked about before the show. So I'll lean Samuel with you guys as well.
Well, there you go. All right, Ricky Donks, 3 for 3 with you around the 4-1-2 crew. Miles Sanders for DK. How about DK? 7 receptions for 36 yards. Are we kidding? I had him going over 40 yards, and he gets 36 on 7 receptions.
Yeah,
but that's not what we're not. This isn't Platt's picks. We're not here to talk about that. But Miles Sanders for DK.
I would say no. I have a hard time trusting the running back situation in Philadelphia. They've said through camp that he's their guy, but then Boston, Scott has always managed to get carries. Gainwell had a pretty serviceable day, all things considered.
Jalen Hurts is going to take away rushing work. I mean, they had 4 different guys score a rushing touchdown.
Right, yeah, exactly. And he scored 0 touchdowns last year, so already a great improvement for him for sure. But I think for me, you can't just get rid of the alpha in offense. I know that people were down on DK a little bit, but if he already is trending downward, you don't want to sell him low. I would wait for a bigger week from him and then try to sell high. I don't think that this really moves the needle unless you really have if DK is just sitting on your bench and you need a starting running back, then okay, maybe that makes sense. But if this is going to be like my wide receiver 2 or a flex for RB2, like it's not really doing it for me.
Well, for me, I'm one of those downers on DK Metcalf. And to your point, Zach, 7 for 7. Geno Smith's best game that he's going to have this season was last night. And he went 7 for 7 for 36 yards. I'm not feeling DK at all. I think that he has higher value right now than Miles Sanders. I think you try to look in another direction, but I'm trying to get out of DK Metcalf as quickly as possible. And I don't have any shares, obviously, because I was down. But if you have him, I'm trying to get out.
So this is a situation where he's trying to get rid of like it would be him trading Sanders for DK.
Yeah, not a chance. Stay away.
And Joe, you would. He's got an announcement going on.
Yeah. We don't want to get subjected.
Asking a question.
We don't want to.
Flights are getting canceled right now.
We don't want to get subjected to any searches. That's all we're saying. To me, I just think it's kind of just like a meh trade. Like if you're selling high on Sanders, like DK isn't the guy that I would target. And if I was on the other side, I wouldn't be trying to get. Like I would be waiting on both ends. I just don't like the trade at all.
Okay.
I think it's fair, but I wouldn't do it. I don't like it.
Do you think DK has a bigger game in him this year? I mean,
yes.
Obviously if he hits 2 touchdowns, we'll say if he gets a lot of touchdowns, but he can have 5 targets, 3 receptions, and 2 of them be touchdowns, and that's his biggest game of the year.
Here's a hot take for you for today. I am more concerned about CeeDee Lamb this season than I am about DK.
I absolutely agree. I don't have him in my top 10. That's why I accidentally put Deebo Samuel twice, because I kept dragging CeeDee Lamb down the list. Like,
yeah, I saw Deebo and Deebo Samuel. I was like, wow, he's really high. He's got Deebo Samuel, the running back, and Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver, both in his top 10 this week.
Yeah, I screwed that up. I want nothing to do with CeeDee Lamb either, and that's crazy to me. But I texted Zach on Saturday or Sunday night right before the game started, and I was just like, why do I want Noah Brown right now? And I quickly added him as a waiver right before the game started, and he had a ton of targets, didn't he? Let me go back and look.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he finished with,
Yeah,
but
9
I understand. Wow. Okay.
And he was on the field more than CD, I feel like. Like he was out there.
Yeah, he might be he's a better blocker for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's I'm not comparing the situations necessarily, but it's like Gabe Davis playing 100% of the snaps in Buffalo because he's the best blocking receiver for them over Stephon Diggs.
Exactly.
Too.
So there's more opportunity out there if they decide to pivot from a run play into a pass. And I liked him. Him and Dalton Schultz are the only 2 you want on this offense right now, and Zeke maybe. But I saw people dropping Tony Pollard on waivers last night because the whole offense, they're fading. But I think that even when Dak went out, Noah Brown was still getting targets. If Cooper Rush is going to target him, and he's going to get points, it's just that he's going to be a flex play dart throw. But I prefer him right now than CD.
I'm not playing anybody in the Cowboys offense in anything until I see what the offense looks like with Cooper Rush.
There was somebody on Facebook, like in a Dallas Facebook group, that like is trying to make parallels between like the Bledsoe injury and like how the Patriots found Brady, like, and how this is going to be the same thing for Cooper Rush. It was
my goodness.
It was magical. And then one real last thing. So we had one more comment from Michael. He's trying to sell high on Sanders. Somebody that I would be interested in targeting actually would be like Mooney. I think Mooney could be like a pretty comparable piece. There's a guy on Twitter. His handle is peaked in high school _fantasy football. He does like a rankings chart of like trade values. And it's broken down into different tiers by position. I guess I should probably share my screen now. That would make a lot more sense, wouldn't it?
Could do that.
Yeah. Let's use our stuff. Let me share this real quick with y'all. So now you can see us. Here's some other things, but so they have an entire ranking system that they update throughout the week. They have things for different rules, so depending on your format, and then it pretty much goes all the way down, and you can see how things are moving. So Najee obviously had a rough week 1, potentially injured. Going to be moving down the list. If we're looking at this particular situation, like I mentioned, they're pretty similarly ranked. So you can see here we got Sanders at like this 19 value, and then DK was previously above him him, but now below. So you really are looking at pretty much anybody that falls into this tier. So this is a helpful tool, I think, just like to evaluate trades as you're getting them. And this is something that gets pushed out every week. So this guy initially did this stuff on Reddit, and then he got picked up by 4for4. And then he still publishes this stuff on the Twitterverse for free. So super useful tool. And then if you're going to trade like multiple players, then you just take the value on the left-hand side and then add those together to kind of figure out what you're doing. Similar to like a keep trade cut for Dynasty. It's that same kind of metric there. And back to me.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend social distancing to stop.
Yeah, I think that's a relatively fair trade if you're targeting someone like Darnell Mooney. I don't even necessarily think that like I know where Drew is with DK. I get it. I don't think that if I'm really needing a receiver. Also, wait, we didn't ask. Is this full point PPR or half point PPR? And does that make a difference for you guys depending on what the answer to that is?
Yes, 7 catches for 8 points.
Yes.
What?
He had 7 catches for 8 points on Monday night for DK.
Yes, because he fumbled too. Yeah, he fumbled.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that if the less PPR that you have in that, then the more value you're going to get for Sanders.
Yeah, I'm saying if it is a full point PPR, that probably leans a little bit more towards the DK side than if it's just a half point.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I still think that Miles Sanders currently does have that little slightly higher value. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very much out on like Lockett. I think Lockett is just going to be a decoy. But I do think that something that DK has, very similar to how I feel about AJ Brown as well, is that like they don't need a lot of action to like take one to the house. Like every time that DK touches the ball, that and is a threat to score. So it's like if they're going to target him 7 times a game, I'm not going to get discouraged by the ADOT. I'll let him get the yak and we'll be fine. So yeah, I don't know.
There was also about 1,000 injuries between Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. And Drew, I don't know how you want to do this. There's about, I said 1,000, but there legitimately is probably about a dozen injuries that you have listed here. However you want to go through these, maybe just talk about like the important ones or the longer term ones. However you want to do it, just kick it off.
I'm just going to rattle some off and we'll discuss. Joe, you can interrupt me if you want to talk to one. Matthew Stafford with his elbow. They talked about that not being a big deal, but watching him last Thursday, that was a big deal in my opinion. He just looked terrible. His throws were sailing. He came off the field at one point, and we all started trying to read lips about how he said he couldn't throw. No one knows what he said, but it looks like there's a problem there, and I'm panicking. I have a lot of Rams players on my rosters, and I'm concerned. Allen Robinson absolutely killed me this week.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. I'm not worried about it at all, honestly. In my opinion, I don't think that he said that I can't throw. I don't think that's what was said. He couldn't have done it like TJ Watt, where like I very clearly was like, all right, he tore his back. Like, this is not good. But for Allen Robinson, he had a really high like route run rate. It's just he didn't get the targets. I think that they got really overwhelmed by the pass rush and just weren't able to settle into the game outside of Cooper Kupp. But like Skoranek had 8 targets, so it's like they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. Cam Akers did not look great at all. Henderson looked pretty solid and almost looked like the bell cow that we had. So it was funny. It was like James Robinson was what everybody thought Cam Akers was going to be. And everyone's like, oh, like James Robinson's kind of beat up. I don't think he's going to do it. And that script has been completely reversed. But the Stafford thing is definitely something to keep your eye on. I don't think that I would start him if I have other options this week. I think he has a good matchup and will be a top 10 QB this week. I think they'll bounce back at home. But, yeah, it's going to be a struggle. I don't think it impacts Kupp, though, if, like, he got targeted so much that it's like he'll be fine either way. One of the top guys in football. But it will be interesting for someone like Robinson. Like, what does that do for him in the offense? But I'm getting very similar vibes to the Robert Woods situation last year, where it was like he wasn't really doing a whole lot, complained, got some more work, and they figured it out. So that offense is Cooper Kupp right now, as it should be, and I don't think they're going to deviate from that. Everybody else will get some crumbs, but he's the big dog there. So.
Right. And just to add on to Akers there, I don't think that he's hurt yet. I was looking at the plays. I watched some highlights. I think that he just has that doghouse in him. I think that based on the stuff that McVay said about him, I just think that there's something going on in that locker room, and McVay is just not happy with him as a player. I don't know if he's not working hard enough or what, but it just looks like McVay is just avoiding him entirely. And I think I added Henderson in multiple leagues last night through waivers. He was my number one waiver that I actually ended up going with on a couple rosters just because of how my roster was built. I think that he has a better chance of being a bell cow all year than Akers does of coming on late, just because it doesn't seem right in terms of him as a player. He looks like he's being faded by that team for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You have anything to add to that?
I do not. I mean, actions speak louder than words. It did not look good on Thursday, despite what they were saying. I'm not like hitting the panic button yet. We will see what week 2 brings. But as a Cooper Kupp owner, I feel safe with him. But if I had somebody, I do have Allen Robinson in league too. So I don't feel as secure about his position or really anybody else in that offense besides Cooper Kupp as we sit here right now.
So T. Higgins with a concussion, obviously left the game against the Steelers. Zach Taylor said today that he made some steps, but again, this is a nonlinear injury. He can make a few steps, look like he's looking good. Then on Friday, he might wake up with a headache and they might pull him back a little bit. So that's something to monitor. In the same game, we got Najee with his ankle and foot. When he got tackled, I thought that his leg exploded. So I'm sitting here completely grateful that he's okay. He's expected to play.
Gumby.
Yep, Gumby. Move on to Elijah Mitchell. Easy one, sprained MCL, unfortunately, in that slop.
You know, that's what's so frustrating me is we were literally talking about the condition of that field before the game, and we said somebody's going to get hurt. Yep, somebody's going to get hurt. Probably a running back because that's typically how it goes. Elijah Mitchell going to miss what, minimum of 4 weeks?
8 weeks.
Minimum of 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Ooh. Sprained MCL, minimum 8 weeks. He's already on IR. A lot of people added Jeff Wilson in waivers last night. Personally, for me, I avoided him. I went Henderson. I went with Julio. I just think that Jeff Wilson's going to get some work, but I think that this is a good thing for Deebo Samuel. When he went down, he got more rushing attempts. I just think that that's who they are as an offense, that they're going to give the ball to Deebo a little more instead of making Jeff Wilson a bell cow.
Well, I think that's going to be what's interesting. So last year that happened, and you're right. I do think that Deebo gets more running work, but does that also mean like that deteriorated his usage in the pass game because he got banged up from running the ball? And so I think if it's going to help anybody out, I think Ayuk is going to be the big beneficiary. Yeah. He didn't have a strong showing in the Storm last week, but he was one of 9 players that ran 100% of the routes. I don't know, change it up. But so if Deebo's going to be running the ball more, then that opens that up because you just got to give him more of a breather.
Right.
So if you have Ayuk, it could be beneficial for you, especially with Kittle still banged up a little bit. But yeah, Deebo's going to have the ball in his hands, and we'll see if he can make plays. He looked really good despite the conditions last week, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point with Ayuk, I've been really high on him. I felt like we were a year early on him last year. I was very disappointed in how he performed last year. He was in the doghouse. I think that you're right. Obviously, with Deebo having his contract issues heading into camp, Brandon Ayuk got to work with Trey Lance a little more, and they have that chemistry. So I couldn't agree more with that take as well.
Yep.
And then moving on to tomorrow night, Keenan Allen. He suffered a hamstring injury. He's already labeled as out. I don't really have an option that I think that you can go to in terms of in terms of Keenan Allen, because when he went out, they actually just spread the ball around. I think they had 7 guys that each tied with 4 targets, and you'd expect Josh Palmer, but it looked like DeAndre Carter was actually the guy that Herbert was actually looking for, which made
Gerald Everett.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm not playing anyone from this game unless you have Mike Williams, because we don't really know what's going to happen yet. I want to see it before I just throw Josh Palmer into the lineup.
Mike Williams also plays insane against the Chiefs. Yes. I don't know what it is. So it's like every time that he plays the Chiefs,
when you said that, it reminded me though, we did not get vintage Sammy Watkins week 1.
Yeah, I was pissed.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. My DFS
you were robbed.
were terrible last week. I was struggling all around. I was pretty upset.
So was Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Before we move on, though, Mike Williams might be my new Tyler Lockett.
Well, yeah, Mike Williams is a huge – he's always been boomer bust.
I know that. But before I was focused on Tyler Lockett, we've already moved past that. He's on. We don't have to worry about him anymore. Now I'm on the train to get rid of Mike Williams in terms of fantasy. I think he's going to explode tomorrow night, to your point, but he's my guy. I'm –
Hey, we didn't mention Chris Godwin. Going to miss a couple weeks probably, but not maybe as severe as what it looked like originally or what they had thought it could be.
Right, yeah, he was actually next on my list. I think it's out of order with our notes. But Chris Godwin, he's going to miss a few weeks. That's why I was super high on Julio. I felt like they were scheming ways to get Julio the ball on Sunday night. So they were giving him rushing attempts, which usually you're going to give that to your speed guy, and they were just confident in him being that runner. And Mike Evans was like 28th or 20th or something last year in targets. He's a guy that just – they're throwing the ball to him in the red zone, but consistently – downfield. That was Chris Godwin. So who's going to be that guy when Chris Godwin's out? I think it's going to be Julio Jones. I'm very high on him. I felt like he looked really good. I mean, last year he struggled with hamstring injuries, and until that happens this year, I think that he's capable of being a solid flex option.
Yeah, they were trying to fool us with this Russell Gage crap, huh?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they signed him. Like, it just seemed kind of pointless if you're going to bring in Julio. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know how sustainable it is. He popped up on the injury report today with a knee thing, but I think it was more of like a veteran maintenance day.
Yeah.
But they had a couple that they missed on that would have gone for some pretty big plays. So I don't know if it's like Brady was just mad that they said they couldn't do like the Moss Brady thing with Julio, but we'll see.
And from what I've heard, Julio started doing the TB12 treatment at the end of camp.
He's all in. You know, I bet you Antonio Brown is punching air right now hearing about this relationship.
That's exactly what Julio could be. We saw what AB was. There were some games where he was elite as a fantasy wide receiver with the Bucs. I think that Julio is going to step in and be similar to that.
He definitely has the potential. He's not that far removed from being one of the top guys in the league. So he may not be what he once was, but he's got some juice there.
He's got enough.
Yeah.
He's got enough to be relevant. And then Dak Prescott, he suffered that thumb injury. It was originally reported that he would miss 6 to 8 weeks, but they decided not to put a pin in his thumb, which is going to speed up his recovery. That could be Jerry Jones just thinking with his wallet or something, because I feel like they should have went with the 6 to 8 week with the pin, but he's risking it. He could be back maybe before he would have to go on IR for 4 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks missed.
They'd have to decide by Saturday if he's going on IR. So. Yeah.
If he's not going on IR, I feel pretty good that he might be back in like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know why they would rush it, but
just in time to not be able to utilize CeeDee Lamb.
And then, Joe, you mentioned this earlier, Alvin Kamara with the ribs. I still think it's pretty early. They didn't talk too much about how he's feeling, so that's something to monitor throughout the week. And then my last guy here was McCorkle Jones with the back injury.
McCorkle.
Yeah. He practiced in full today, so he'll be out there against the Steelers next week, and Alex Heisman's going to be laying on his ass. So. Good luck, McCorkle.
I love it. Hey, you didn't have this on there because he didn't get hurt in a game, but I saw he missed practice today. It's Wednesday, so that could be a day where if you're going to miss practice, it would be Wednesday. DeAndre Swift, though, didn't practice.
Yeah, that happened like an hour ago that they released that. I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, it's something to monitor. It's probably
They said ankle.
Yeah, it's probably just keeping him fresh for the week. He had a lot of work on.
Yeah, looked really good too. I mean, I didn't watch the game; I just watched the highlights. But he was breaking off long run after long run. Any other injuries, or is that it?
That's all I had on my list.
Okay. All right. Well, for the first time, we're going to move the football down to start sit. If you guys have obviously any questions for us in the comments, please go ahead and do so. In terms of that, we've gotten some great ones. That's how we actually started off the show, because we get to the comments as soon as we can. But if you guys have more stuff, please be sure to type them up. But I guess as we wait, what do you want to talk about while we wait?
I think one of the interesting things that we looked at and like you're trying to figure out is like the tight end wasteland and like who is like a reliable player right now. Somebody that I think everybody faded at least a little bit was Mike Gesicki. just because they added to the wide receiver room. But if you think about Gesicki's utilization in years past, he was primarily a slot receiver. But if you look at the routes run from last week, he actually was only running routes like 43% of the time. So it's like they've completely like ruined anything that he has. So it's like, to me, like if you have him on your team, like you need to be finding other options. On the flip of that, I don't know how, but Tyler Conklin has emerged as like a wide receiver kind of tight end for the Jets. He ran routes on 82% of pass attempts. Hayden Hurst, who you normally think of as a blocker, ran 80% of the time. And like that was right there with like Evan Ingram, Darren Waller. So it's really interesting to see. So I would say you want to get people like above 70%. Gesicki at 40% land. Like there's no way you can be starting him this week or realistically having him on your team anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I'll add on to his Hayden Hurst. I was really high on him in terms of a waiver claim. He's just a guy that he has talent. He came in the league in this second round. He just got fallen behind really good tight ends and just forgotten about. He came in with Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews took over. Great stud tight end. Went to Atlanta. Fell behind Kyle Pitts. Great tight end. Like it's just a guy that had bad luck. And I think that he finally found his spot where he has the opportunity to make some noise. But obviously he's still going to be like the third or fourth option in Cincinnati. But I think there's going to be weeks where you need a bye week fill-in. He's definitely someone that you can throw in there and hope to get some points out of him. Obviously he's going to be touchdown dependent if you really want him to boom, just like every other tight end. But I think that they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. Surprisingly, I think Burrow threw like 50 sometimes on Sunday. They were down, but I think that that's going to be what they are as a team. And I think Hayden Hurst is going to be someone that you can look to and throw into your lineup when you need someone.
Yeah. No, he did look really good against the Steelers. He had that one big catch in overtime that set up one of the Bengals' misses, what we thought was going to end the game. Actually, this is a good way, if people aren't going to comment, that we can implement something I want to start doing every week where I ask you guys if it's an overreaction or if you can get on board with it. I want to start, and I know Drew's going to love this. Is it an overreaction to say Michael Thomas is back?
I do. It's just because he's been out of football for so long that I still need to see more about what he is. The guy I was actually really impressed by was Jarvis Landry. I felt like he brought a lot to the Saints on Sunday. And he's a guy that I'm watching as someone that I would prefer to have on my roster because I think that his throws are high percentage. And I still think Michael Thomas is going to be touchdown dependent. And if he didn't have those two scores, then he's not going to be talked about as much as he was. And for the first three quarters, I think he was invisible. I think it all happened late. And it's just one of those things I got to see more of it before I really buy into it.
I think from what I saw from the game, which wasn't a ton, but it looked like the timing between Jameis and Michael Thomas was like a bit of a struggle. It didn't seem they were really on the same page, and that probably has to do with that lack of reps. That being said, Drew, to your point, both of those guys had 25% or more of a target share in the game on Sunday. Michael Thomas was at 25%. Jarvis Landry was at 28%. It seems like he's back into the role that he had really in Washington, or not Washington, Miami, Cleveland too. But like Jarvis Landry was pretty much like what Jalen Waddle is for like the Dolphins now. It was like he might catch like 20 balls and do the Tyler Lockett and only get like 30 or 40 yards, but in PPR it was amazing. I do think that Michael Thomas is back. I'm really excited to see him continue to progress, and I think that it bodes well for the offense. I think that he's still the number one guy. I think it hurts somebody like Chris Olave to have like the emergence of Landry kind of being in that second target option. But yeah, the New Orleans slants looking good. I'm here for it.
Yeah, for one more thing for Thomas, I'm just really happy for him because he hasn't played football for 2 years. It's just that because of that long time off, I just feel like he needs to get out there more, and I need to see it a little more before I'm just going to completely buy into it. Like he's not a guy I'm just throwing into my lineup and expecting the top production that he had. And the other thing too is when he was a top receiver, he was getting like 12 targets a week, and I just don't see that type of target share continuing throughout the season.
Does it give you any hope in the future? Obviously, he's not going to be playing this year. But for what's his face from Atlanta that's suspended, Calvin Ridley, like to seeing Thomas, like his absence, like I would have thought, like, all right, you haven't played in 2 years, like it's done, it's over.
Right.
does that give you any like optimism from like a dynasty perspective that like Calvin Ridley can come back since it's not injury related?
That's the thing right there. It's not injury related, so he can still work out the same way he was working out before during the offseason, and he's going to be ready when it comes down to it next year. And I think he's going to be on a different team, and they're going to be someone out there who's going to give him the targets, just like A.J. Brown moving over from Tennessee to Philadelphia, which I do hope you bring him up as an overreaction. I think that he's going to go somewhere, and he's going to have the opportunity to excel again because he's able to work out and be prepared for when it happens.
Do not ruin my topic list.
That better be on it, though.
Well, that's not my next one for sure, because my next one is going to pivot to Baltimore. Is Baltimore going to make it a point of emphasis to target receivers this year? Devin Duvernay with 2 receiving touchdowns.
I don't care about that. But I'm going to tell you why in a second.
I'll just go with this. I don't think that they're going to target receivers the way they did on Sunday. The New York Jets defense is just terrible, and they have no one that can cover anybody on the outside. The big thing I took from this game, though, is that I want nothing to do with the Baltimore Raven backfield. Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake absolutely destroyed me across DFS this last week. I was shocked by the utilization that they had. And if they're going to come back and give J.K. Dobbins a huge workload because they can't trust those other guys, I don't think he's making it through the season. I just don't.
Mark Andrews is still the guy. He had 2 long bombs that like he almost had, but Sauce Gardner made like an unbelievable play to save a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then he missed another one. I am not really concerned about it at all. I think that Bateman will probably emerge as like a target.
I told Zach last night something that Joe's going to absolutely hate, and I'm going to bring it up anyways. I was not as high on Mark Andrews as everyone else. I was taking Pitts over him. I took Pitts over him in multiple drafts. Obviously, it hasn't worked out yet. But Mark Andrews, majority of the work that he got last year to make him fantasy relevant came with Tyler Huntley. It's just a fact. He exploded when Tyler Huntley was on the field. And I'm concerned that he just doesn't have the chemistry with Lamar that he did and showed with Tyler Huntley. He's still great. He's still a top tight end. But he absolutely exploded onto the scene with Tyler Huntley.
The one thing I will say to counter that, though, is that Lamar had a very it was a much lower TD percentage than he did in previous years. So part of the reason that I'm so bullish on Mark Andrews is, one, he is the top target on his team. So that like immediately is going to put him into like a top 3 to 5 area. And that's the same thing for Pitts. It's the same thing for Kelsey. Kittle used to be that way, but it's not really like that.
But what if
anymore.
He's not? Like, what if Zach's saying is true and we're not like we're not overreacting yet? But what if 3 weeks down the line we're seeing that Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay are a thing?
If Devin Duvernay is a thing,
he only got 4 targets in this game.
Right.
He just caught all 4 and 2 of them were touchdowns.
Right. But they also got up really big on the Jets once they finally got moving, and they didn't have to do as much.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think Andrews is obviously a top tight end because the tight end position is a wasteland, but I just don't – he's not who he was last year. That's all I'm saying. And if you have that expectation, I feel like you're going to be slightly disappointed. You're still going to get top tight end production out of him, but if you're expecting him to be Travis Kelce, he's not going to be Travis Kelce. And I'm hoping that Kyle Pitts is more of Travis Kelce, but I just don't see Andrews being that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm looking at right now is tight end production from week 1. So Travis Kelce finished with the most fantasy points at 22. The next 5 guys are all owned in like less than 30% of leagues, and 2 of them are 0%.
Farmouth, I bet.
No. OJ Howard, 1%.
Okay,
Taysom Hill, 10%. Gerald Everett, 27%. Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson, both Seattle tight ends, are in there, and they're 0% owned.
Wait, what were you looking at? Targets or total fantasy points?
No, fantasy points in week 1. And there were only 8 tight ends in total that cracked double digits. It was a bad week for tight ends.
It was a terrible week.
Overreaction. The tight end position sucks.
No.
Yes.
Let me come up with some more. You mentioned A.J. Brown. I actually don't know. I was messing around. I don't know where you wanted me to go with that, to be honest.
I'm just absolutely shocked that he got the target share.
Really?
It's not the player, it's the offense. I couldn't believe that Jalen Hurts threw the ball as much as he did and as well as he did, and how many times A.J. Brown got the ball. Like, he went from a rush-first offense to a rush-first offense, but they made it a point to throw the ball to A.J. Brown as much as possible, and I didn't expect that coming into the season. I thought that he would get the ball, but not the way he got the ball on Sunday. And if that's a thing, he has a real chance to be wide receiver 1 this year. He should be in the conversation with Jamar Chase, Davante Adams. If he's getting that type of target share, Joe, he absolutely should be.
He's paid him $100 million, so he better get that target share.
You don't think that he has that ability if he's getting that type of work?
After what I saw this week from that man, Justin Jefferson.
Oh, I didn't say Justin Jefferson.
No, I know. He doesn't have
their own tier for me.
Yeah, so he could be wide receiver 3, but he ain't going to be 1 or 2.
Okay, that's fair. I spoke a little bit too much. But if he's getting 12 targets a game, and they're those types of targets.
Can we pivot this actually to our guys of the week? I'm not using the term that Drew's been throwing around to me.
What is it?
We're not saying it. Our guys of the week, because actually one of mine, I feel like it's not necessarily like an under the radar guy, but this is a guy going back to 2020 that I wanted the Steelers to draft. Missed out on him because Indy took him anyways. Michael Pittman Jr. though, like how many guys are that solidified into a wide receiver 1 role where it's like the wide receiver 2 is such a distant 2 that like the volume that he's going to get is just going to be exceptional. Like I love Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman Jr. this year as a duo.
And they looked terrible. The team looked awful on Sunday, but it's Matt Ryan. Like he gets his guy and he peppers him the ball, and it looks like we all knew that Pittman was going to be the guy, but I think there was concerns like, is it really going to go down like that? And it's exactly how it did. So if you got him in the 3rd round, like you're probably feeling pretty nice about it. I'm very excited about him too. I think he's going to have a monster season.
How wild is it? Before you guys say your guys, I'm looking at targets. Deontay Johnson, I don't know if it seemed like this watching the game, 4th most targets.
Right. Yeah.
In the league.
Yeah. I mean, he's still the alpha in that offense. I was a little bit disappointed in how the offense performed. I thought at the times that Trubisky did have time that he kind of got rattled, and then he was very happy feet like for the majority of the game. A lot of it was deserved. As my computer's about to die, I'll figure this out momentarily. Yeah, I mean, Deontay's going to get the ball a lot. So good for him.
To Joe's point, and I don't want to support Flash's narrative towards getting Pickett as a starting quarterback. That was the one thing that I was watching throughout the preseason that I just felt like Mitch always seemed like he was in a panic mode. He looked like a rookie quarterback in terms of how the rush was coming, and he just felt like he couldn't handle the pressure. And I felt like Pickett didn't look that way. I'm not concerned about Trubisky. I think that things are going to get better as the season goes along. But that was the one thing that I looked at them as a separation. I was like, why I felt like Pickett there was an argument to be had for him to be the starting quarterback this year, just based on that. But
I think what that is a product of the offensive line still. Like even when they have snaps that aren't bad, it's quarterbacks anticipating that it's going to be, and they're not going to have the time.
But Pickett didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was the separator for me that I just felt like I understand why people are clamoring for Pickett, but again, that's not who the Steelers are. They're going to give Trubisky the chance to be the guy until he's not. And
who was your guy? Like I said, Michael Pittman's my guy that I'm pounding the table for.
My guy was Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the reason why for that is because all offseason, everyone's argument was that there was no TJ Hawkinson, there was no DeAndre Swift, there was no one there that was competing with him for targets. And guess what? They were all back, and he was the number one guy who was getting targets. He had 12 targets. He had 8 receptions, which is what we're expecting. 8 to 10. If he can get 8 to 10 receptions a week, he's going to be relevant. No matter how far his ADOT is, he's going to be relevant. And he got 64 yards, and he was able to get in the end zone. If that's a week-to-week thing, he is a staple in your lineup, and I was really happy to see that he was able to shut up a lot of the haters in terms of what they were saying about Hawkinson and Swift. Yeah.
Dude's also absolutely shredded for anybody that didn't watch Hard Knocks. Joe's going to be back in just 1 second. There he is. I think this looks a little bit better.
Yeah,
due to the
you should do this every time.
No, I'm also saying the like vertical camera that it presents for the bottom. I think it fits better with him being at the bottom and you being in that
yeah.
corner.
Interesting. All right, I'm gonna mute now because we're TSing. But is this for this week, or is this like
I took it as just like something that you picked up on week 1 that you're just like, this guy going forward is one of the guys I'd be pounding the table for. That's at least
it's something that we do weekly. It was just something that was new, like something that like happened during that week that you weren't expecting, or if someone got hurt and you saw this guy step up, you think it's real or not, just stuff like that. But for week 1, it was all about Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'm surprised that you didn't say Saquon, honestly.
So Saquon felt like the obvious choice.
Yeah.
That's why I separated them. Like, I was clamoring for Saquon all offseason because I just feel like he's healthy. And when he's healthy, you see what he is. We talked about this. People were fading Saquon, but not fading CMC in the first round, which I thought was absolutely insane. And we know what he is. As long as he's healthy, this is what he is, and he's going to compete for RB1.
One thing I do want to bring up, Drew, just because of Javonte Williams, like I feel like anytime I see anything about him, I got to bring it up on here. 12 targets.
Yeah, can we talk about Javonte Williams quick?
Go ahead. I just brought his name up. Him and Breece Hall, the only 2 running backs to get double-digit targets.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the little bit of a fantasy aspect, and I'm just going to rant and just flip out about Nathaniel Hackett. I feel like Javonte Williams has a floor. So when I'm going to argue about him as a player, it's going to be about a football aspect and not about his fantasy value. I feel like he had 20 fantasy points on Monday night, and he didn't even score a touchdown. I think he has a solid floor at 10 to 15, and if he scores a touchdown in that week, he's a boom. My problem is that I felt like he looked amazing as a football player on Monday night, and every single time they took him out, their drive stalled. And that's not something against Melvin Gordon. It was just something about the energy that Javonte Williams brings as a player. It was just helping that offense move. And Benjamin Albright, he's a great guy on Twitter. I follow him and love his content, but he was gloating a little bit about how he said that Melvin Gordon was still going to be a thing. And I tweeted at him. I was just like, just look at what the offense looks like when Melvin Gordon's on the field and when Javonte Williams is on the field. And he was just like, oh, they had a false start penalty, knocked them back, and it just knocked them out of rhythm. I was like, bullshit. Like, in the fourth quarter, they had a false start penalty with a minute left, and they're driving downfield to try to get that game-winning field goal. And they put Javonte Williams in. He got a screen pass. He made it 4th and manageable. Of course, they completely forgot about the play clock, had no idea what they're doing, and kicked the 64-yard field goal. But Javonte Williams is just – he looks like a special player to me. And if they're going to continue to do this, I feel like it's football malpractice, and they're going to continue to lose games to a Seattle Seahawks team that's lucky to win 5 games. And if they want to frick around, they're going to find out exactly what it's like having Javonte Williams on the bench. I just think that they're doing themselves a disservice as a football team by playing Melvin Gordon as much as he's playing. I think he should be on the field and spell Javonte Williams, but a 50-50 timeshare just doesn't make sense. And if you want to win 7 games this year and be mediocre, fine, but they can't mess around with that in the division that they're playing in. They need to give this guy the football if they want to win games. That's just how I feel.
Yeah.
They also spent an early 2nd-round pick on him, and they traded up to draft him.
They traded up for him.
That's what I was going to say, too.
They just look clueless, like, as an organization. Like, this dude is talented. If you want to give him some
They don't have the 5th year on him either because it was in the 2nd round. Like, there's just so many things going to they should be getting the touches out of him right now.
I just don't get it. Like, just watch the game. It's simple eye test. They're a completely different football team, in my opinion, when he's on the field. Like, whatever. If you want to go and lose games, fine, whatever. But like, it just doesn't make sense to me. We're gonna get our fantasy football points because he has a solid floor, and when he scores a touchdown, we're gonna get some boom weeks. That's just simple as that. But if they want to win football games, put him on the field. We're gonna be looking at 25 points a week from this guy.
I also know this isn't like a fantasy thing. I don't know if I've watched a worse coach game in my life than what Nathaniel Hackett did on Monday night.
And people want to fire.
Not just the usage, not just the running back usage, just all around.
And
really
Russ
bad.
was completely confused at times. Like on the play when Javonte fumbled, like it was like the third play in a row where it looked like Russ forgot that the play clock existed.
Yeah,
and
took it down to 0, and then he has to clap real fast to get the snap. Like, yeah,
right. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, whatever. If you want to,
you know what? That's a product of
whatever.
People want to say, not guys not playing whatsoever, starters playing whatsoever in the preseason. That's what Denver did, and look at what that offense looked like to kick off the season.
But think like he had 30 yards rushing in the first quarter. I had a prop bet on him at over 45, and he didn't hit it. He had 30 yards rushing in the first quarter. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it makes no sense. Like, whatever.
Well, the same game parlay had
5 games this year. Whatever.
The same game parlay had that for Javonte and DK over 40 yards, and neither one happened. They were like literally as safe as I could go, and it didn't happen. So
yeah, just whatever. They want to lose football games, frick them. They'll find out. They'll find out what it's like not playing Javonte Williams. I promise them that. I tweeted at the Broncos like 3 times to say.
Joe, do you have a guy though that you're like you picked up on week 1? You're like, wow, I like this surprised me. This is a guy going forward that you might not have thought. Or as soon as they're done with that announcement, you can let me know on that. You know who else I'll say, because you said about St. Brown in Detroit, like I was kind of not as high as where DeAndre Swift was being drafted, but he looked really good.
Yeah, I was concerned because we know the talent, like coming out of Georgia, like the dude was elite, but like I just didn't know if he could stay healthy. He just always has lagging injuries that just he's playing through them, but they hinder him as a player. So if he stays healthy, I think he has that upside where he was drafted. But like you were drafting him at your ceiling, in my opinion, because of those injuries that he usually sustains.
So Swift probably would have been one of my guys going into the draft that I liked a lot. I don't really have too many shares of him, mostly just because of where I was in the draft order. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of people that came to mind for me. One was Christian Kirk in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. I thought he had a really good game. I had a lot of concerns in the preseason. It's unbelievable.
I also have I have Christian Kirk in the lead. Actually, I'll ask you guys this because we're still on start-sit stuff. I'll bring up my own start-sit question here because who was it that I was considering taking out? No, not best ball. Get out of here.
But he absolutely looked like the alpha in that offense, which we expected from the money side of it.
Would you play him this week over Darnell Mooney?
Who are we saying?
Yes.
Christian Kirk.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes.
His targets were elite target share.
Because I feel like, Cortland Sutton, I liked what I saw, relatively speaking. I think his targets are only going to go up. And then Juju. I have Juju, and I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. I feel like
if you can get anyone in the Chargers-Chiefs game, I think you have to play them.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. To me, it's Mooney or Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
Because I'm playing those two. Sutton
I like Kirk. Juju. I think they'll both have nice weeks. I think that they will both outperform Sutton this week.
Really? I have Sutton as my number 10 receiver this week.
Yeah. But there's not really a good reason for that. It's just a hunch.
I thought Booty looked good. He had that long touchdown, but the Booty looked good.
The Booty always looked good.
He always looked good. I want to bring up another one though. So another big takeaway that I had this week, and I absolutely love this because of who he is in the preseason. I was just raving about him, and his ADP just made no sense to me.
AJ Dillon.
AJ freaking Dillon. Like he led the team in targets.
Yeah.
And
did he really?
He did.
He had way more snaps or rushes than AJ Dillon. They were on the field at the same, or Aaron Jones. And the thing for me, it wasn't even just those numbers. They were down. That should have been game script where Aaron Jones should have been feasting, but AJ Dillon was the guy.
On that point, they were pretty similar to the third quarter, and then Dillon got 4 carries in a row at that point. They also said after the game they want to get the ball more spread out, I guess, or something. They didn't want Dillon dominating the touches as much, so we'll see if that's coach speak or what that looks like. But yeah, especially if you're drafting ESPN, huge steal. Because his ADP was in the hundreds. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I just think it's going to go up for both of them. Their wide receivers look terrible. Christian Watson couldn't get the ball dropped into his lap, and he couldn't catch it. I think Romeo Doubs looked good, but the targets weren't there. I think that the two guys you want obviously are those two, and I just think it's going to be better. And the separator for me is that if you're at the goal line, A.J. Dillon's got way more weight, and you see those legs. Like, he's getting the touchdowns.
Yeah.
I know that something like Lovey's already come out and said something about it going forward. We'll see what he actually does with it. But how are we feeling about the week 1 situation that we saw in Houston with Rex Burkhead?
I don't like that backfield. I think that Pierce got super overdrafted.
He did.
But yeah, I don't know. Their offense did not look great. I don't think that Mills is going to take the step forward that everybody was hoping for. Maybe that's a bit of an overreaction in itself. But yeah, I think at best it's going to be a timeshare kind of situation. I don't feel crazy about either one. You're really banking on an injury for either one of those two to be startable for me.
I disagree, but you can't start either of them until you see it with Dameon Pierce. But I think that he's really talented. And I think that he's eventually going to come on. I know Lovie Smith did say that he would be more rested. I don't know if you saw the most recent comment, though.
About like the glass half full or whatever, or something with him?
It was another comment where they were essentially just like, we know we need to get him the ball. Like, I think that they know that he's extremely talented. And maybe they're just not rushing him into this. Rex Burkhead's a veteran. They're going to get him the ball. But I'm playing him every single week in a DFS lineup because, in my opinion, it's going to come and he's just going to absolutely explode onto the scene. And he's going to win DFS lineups for you at that point. But I'm not putting him in.
Are we still talking about football?
I'm very confused.
Wait, I don't understand.
It's okay. You'll see it later when we post it on Twitter.
Yeah. Just
I said
some of
that
the words that were put together there.
They said that they need to get him the ball.
Yes.
I'm going to play Dameon Pierce in DFS every week because there's going to be a week where he explodes onto the scene. Is that not what I said?
He's coming.
That's kind of what you said.
All right. My cat's jumping around. I think that there's going to be a week where he just comes out of nowhere and then he's going to be a staple in your lineup, but you can't put him into a redraft lineup until you actually do see it.
Yeah, for sure. You know who I think is going to be a top 5 player this year is going to be Fournette. Fournette is looking crazy. There's no one really to back him up. I mean, Rachaad White will get like some pass down work, but Lenny looked good. I mean, for all they were saying in camp where he was like, oh, he's 260 pounds and like all this stuff. Like,
dude, he's Mac from Always Sunny. He put on all of the weight as a joke, and then right before week 1, he just shed it. It's insane. He doesn't look like that at all, but the pictures were there during the preseason where he just looked humongous.
He got that James Harden diet. Yeah, exactly.
Bang. So did we have stuff for like ad drop? The thing is, we normally do the show on Tuesday. Due to Joe's travel, we're doing it on Wednesday, so like we missed that waiver wire Wednesday talk. So I don't really know what we want to do with this. If you guys had anything to bring up.
Really the only thing that I was going to say is just like thinking about like defenses for the week. Just like I think Cleveland will still be a serviceable streaming option. They have a decent matchup. The Bengals are also a pretty popular defense to stream for the week. If you don't have like the Bills or somebody.
I picked up the Bills, by the way, defense.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
What'd you say?
I didn't like what I saw from Green Bay. Obviously loved what I saw from Buffalo, so I just made that switch.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers defense, even without TJ, might be, I guess not matchup proof, but majority of the offenses in this league, I feel like you can have them on your team and you don't have to worry about ad dropping. I just felt like they looked that good.
I forgot where I saw it.
To win games.
I forgot who said it. It was one of the Steelers beats, but they said that the defensive scheme that they're running right now is almost like a hybrid of like previous defenses from Flores and
I thought it was I thought that was a tweet from one of the Patriots reporters.
Is that where it was from?
I think so.
Because they were
talking Patriots guys.
Well, they were talking about like how they're using a lot of cover 2 and then like single high. It was like I think like 70 or 80% of like the snaps, and they're just terrorizing everybody. Because I mean, we have that front 4, but the Steelers defense is probably going to be a good pickup as well, just because they didn't have a lot of people were nervous about week 1 against Cincinnati. So I think that they would probably still be available. So that's definitely a good add as well. I just never think of it because like a home league, like somebody's going to have the Steelers usually.
Right. Wait till you see what their value was in DFS.
This might be the tweet that you're talking about, Joe, from Evan Lazar of Patriots.com. Steelers defense feels like it's combined Terrell Austin, split safety routes with Brian Flores' man coverage tendencies.
Yeah,
that's cover 2, 23 snaps, and cover 1, 17 snaps on over 50% of Cincy's passing plays.
Yeah, so it'll be cool to see.
Drew, anything else that you wanted to bring up? Maybe like about like our waiver stuff that we put out yesterday. Obviously, like it's passed, so if those guys didn't clear, it's kind of pointless. But
I talked about Julio. Joe mentioned Mike Gesicki. I had him on my list here as someone you just drop him. There's no point. I mentioned Noah Brown. I like him. He's only owned in 0.8% of leagues. I just think that like he's someone you can stash. He's going to get you targets. I feel like he's safe if you need a flex play. And then one more guy, actually. I have him in my DFS lineup then because I had to go low with my wide receiver cost. But Greg Dortch. Hollywood Brown was getting a lot of attention, and he was just there, just feeding targets. And 7 receptions on 9 targets for 63 yards. I added him in a lot of leagues. I didn't use a waiver claim on him. I waited for him to clear. But I think that he's a guy that maybe you can get something out of until Hopkins comes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're still on the Zach Ertz train there, though, right?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, he was banged up last week a little bit.
Right.
It looks like he's banged up again, but still trending to play. But, yeah, his routes run and all that stuff, all the numbers look good, even though the results weren't necessarily there. And I think that's the big thing. Like, so you don't want to panic drop people week 1. On one hand, you could get somebody like a Cordarrelle Patterson last year who really flashed and then was great the whole season. He also looked tremendous last week. I think he was severely underdrafted. But I think it's all about like, all right, what is this person like? What is their role on the team pretty much? So like if this is like a handcuff and like they haven't surfaced yet, or if they're a rookie and it's like they're going to take some time, like you can't just go and drop everybody because they have one bad game. I usually give people 2-3 weeks before I really start moving the needle, unless it's like, all right, like all of these metrics are looking pretty terrible.
Field Yates put something out today about Mike Gesicki, and that's what really put me over the edge. I just don't think that it's there. They were using him more of as a blocker this week more than usual, and then there was a ton of talk about them trying to trade him at the beginning of preseason. So I think that they're just out on him. I just don't think he's going to get the role that he used to have. So I just don't think he's worth the roster spot.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we take a look at these your DFS lineup?
No, I don't think so. I had a terrible week. If anybody cares to know in terms of like how I felt.
Oh, Drew cheated to beat me in our one dynasty league. So
the other thing I'll say as well
is Cam Akers with a goose egg, and I still beat you.
There's probably a lot of people that are a little nervous about Kyle Pitts right now, but his targets were there, the routes were there, so he's gonna have his stuff happen. So if you think that there's someone in your league that is panicking about him, like this is probably going to be like the one dud game for the year. So like that's like a great like buy low target.
Yeah.
So
I send a trade once a day on Kyle Pitts. They always get declined, but it's not going to stop. So maybe this week I'll say yes.
All right. Well, Drew, let's take a look at this week's DFS lineup. I love the one. I love that you got Greg Dortch in here, by the way. I want to say that before I put it up. Where do you want to start with this thing?
I'll just go in order. So when I went with Jameis this week, I typically like to take a running quarterback, but there wasn't anyone there in terms of the pricing that I felt like fit my lineup. I want to have Saquon and CMC in my lineup this week because last week was just all about the big name wide receivers, and Saquon and CMC are going head to head this week in their matchup. And I just think that they're going to be on the field one-upping each other this entire day. I could see them both with 30 points. I wanted to make sure I have them in every single lineup I have for DFS this week. I just have a feeling, a gut call that I just think they're both going to just destroy.
They're either going to like both have like 1,000,000 points, or they're both going to like disintegrate like the Avengers.
Yeah, which we should also talk about CMC before we get off this. The other reason why I put him in is because I feel like he wasn't good last week, and I think that the Panthers know that they need to get him the ball. He was bailed out by a touchdown. If he doesn't get that score, we're looking at him at under 10 points. Everybody's panicking. To that point, though, I spent so much on Saquon and CMC that I essentially had to punt at the wide receiver position. And obviously, Greg Dortch came in at 3,300, and I was just like, that's my best shot at someone in the 3,000 is going to get me targets based on last week. So I'll throw him in there. Hopefully, he gets a touchdown and gets relatively the same amount of targets. I think the Cardinals stink. Their defense stinks. I think that they're going to have to throw the ball a lot to stay in games. You saw it last week. They got the shit kicked out of them by the Chiefs, and they were throwing a ton. Julio, again, I'm high on. I felt like his pricing at 5,500 was solid for a guy that I can throw in there, and I think that he's going to get work because I think that they're scheme fitting him to get the ball. So I like that. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, same thing. He proved last week that he's a guy that they want to target, and I'm expecting that to continue. So I threw him in there. He was 6,500. I thought he was reasonably priced. And then Pat Freiermuth, this is the big one I wanted to talk about. Joe, you're getting your belly button pierced this year, just so you know. This dude, like,
what happened? Wait. Do I commit to this?
There's a text that we have where you said that if he outscores George Kittle this year, you'll get your belly button pierced.
No, within 1 point.
Oh, wait, within 1.8. So he doesn't even have to outscore him. Pat Freiermuth had 10 targets last week, and top 5 in targets for tight ends. Every single one of those guys had touchdowns, and he was near the top in fantasy without a score. Tight end is typically a position where you need a touchdown to be serviceable unless you have one of the big three. And Pat is showing that with the target share that he's getting, that he's going to be relevant whether he scores a touchdown or not. And I think at 4,400, he is an absolute steal week to week in DFS until they decide to look at that target share and price him up with. He's not going to be up there with Andrews, Kelsey, and Pitts at like 7,000 and 8,000. But if you're getting this guy at 4,400 or 5,000, 5,500, he's a staple in your lineup at those 10 targets. And to Zach's point, we talked about it last night, Mitch Trubisky likes to target tight ends in the middle of the field. So I like him moving forward. And I think that he's a steal at this spot. And then finally,
wait, how much did Pat cost?
He was only 4,400. And you're typically looking at 7,000, 8,000 on Kelsey and Andrews. So if he's getting a similar target share as those guys, I think that he's going to pay off. And he doesn't have to score a touchdown.
Well, here's the thing. If Pat maintains to be the second option on the team for targets, then yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's sustainable. And to your point of him throwing to the middle of the field, that did not happen at all.
Yeah, but when it did, it went to him.
It was all dump offs. Like they did nothing over the middle of the field, like of distance, right?
If he's catching the ball and running with it the way he is, that's enough.
Sure. Yeah, totally. But it's like if you can't believe in both Pickens, Claypool, and Freiermuth. Like you got to pick one, and that's going to be your guy.
I know.
From what I saw on the offense, I think that Claypool has the highest floor out of those three. I think that Pickens is going to come on as the season goes. And I think he ends up being the number 2 target on the team. But they were definitely trying to get the ball in Claypool's hands. And Pat was almost feeling like more of a safety valve. But I think week to week it's just going to move around.
Pat's not going to get 10 targets a week, but if he's getting 5 or 6 and he scores a touchdown, he's gonna be a suitable tight end all year.
I just don't know how many touchdowns the Steelers are going to be scoring this year if we're going to keep it a buck.
Well, I'm hoping they're going to score. They're scoring.
I mean, Minka, sure.
Again, there weren't 10 tight ends that scored double digits this week. So
right, yeah. So it could happen. I could get my belly button pierced, I guess, but
it'll be sick. Don't worry.
And
I have an Audi, by the way, for the folks.
Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, I usually don't like to pick guys against the Steelers, but
unbelievable.
When I was looking last week, the Steelers' defense was ferocious. It's insane. It's going to continue to be insane. But Joe Mixon had elite usage, and I can't remember how many targets he had out of the backfield.
I think he had around 10-ish, I think. But he carried. Yeah.
He had 9 targets for 7 receptions and 63 yards. The Steelers give that up because they'd rather bend but not break. I think that Ramondre Stevenson is going to get a lot of work in the passing game this week because Ty Montgomery also was placed on IR today.
Yeah.
So he was very cheap based off his poor week last week. I guess it was like a mediocre week. His price was the only thing that fit into my flex spot. with that type of upside. So if he's getting maybe 10 carries and he's able to get another 10 targets, I think he has the potential to be a sleeper this week against the Steelers.
And speaking of the Steelers, that's your defense.
Yeah, 2,700. They were the 13th price defense this week. After what they did last week, makes absolutely no sense to me why they would be the 13th price. They were an absolutely no-brainer. Against McCorkle,
no TJ.
McCorkle Jones. They're not going to lose a game to a man named McCorkle.
They shouldn't have had that much of a drop-off, but I'm guessing that's pretty much just due to TJ Watt not being there.
Steelers at home against McCorkle Jones, 2,700. I'm not spending up $4,000 on a defense.
I know that obviously Miami shut down New England pretty well, but did Jones turn the ball over?
I don't know, but he will this week.
I know Melvin Ingram
he definitely did.
Touchdown, but it was a fumble. I didn't know who fumbled it.
I have it up here. He had an interception.
Okay.
They did have that. There was 2 fumbles too.
Wow. Okay. I like it. I actually, full disclosure, have not put together a DFS lineup yet. Don't know if Joe has, but
I have Trey Lance as a sleeper as well this week.
he came in. It's going at the bottom of the screen right now. I want to say like 9 for us. Yeah.
I couldn't remember his price, but I couldn't fit him into that lineup, so that's the reason why he's not there. But he will be in some of my DFS.
Lot of talking heads already down on Trey Lance after one game played in a monsoon.
We also, I don't know if y'all just saw this comment.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Ooh. Dalvin Cook didn't look that good on Sunday, and their offense is built around the passing attack clearly.
Well, yeah, well, if you noticed when they got the ball on the goal line, they had 5 goal to go plays that they ran, and 4 of them were passes. Traditionally for the Vikings, they would be jamming that down every time, and that was not the case. So I think Dalvin is not going to meet where he's at for the ADP. I know that DJ Moore had a tough week, but that's all. That's a lot for me to get.
23 touches, 108 total yards. Dalvin Cook.
Kamara either. He was tough this week too. Kamara. Plus his
that's why. Yeah, not that I'm gonna accept the trade based off 1 week. I declined that trade actually already. But with him having the rib issue, I didn't know how much we thought that would impact him going forward.
I would probably take the Kamara Moore deal. I would probably take that. Dalvin, he's in an elite offense. He's getting the work. Their offensive line looks serviceable, much more than it was last year. Then you get rid of the risk if Kamara does happen to get suspended. I think people kind of forgot about that. They don't think it's going to happen.
Isn't it Javonte Williams and DJ Moore? And
it's Javonte Williams and DJ Moore for Kamara.
Yeah, I'm not giving away Javonte Williams and DJ Moore for either of those guys.
I got you. Oh, no. Then never mind. Sorry, I misread that.
Yeah, so he's being offered Dalvin Cook for Javonte and DJ Moore, or Kamara instead of Cook.
Instead of Cook, got it. Okay. Yeah.
While we're on that subject too, I think we need to bring up Robbie Anderson. He had a big bounce back week.
Another guy you had?
Yeah.
I'm not really too worried about Robbie Anderson. He had 1 broken play that he was able to turn into a score, but I don't think it's going to be reliable as a week-to-week thing.
I think it's something to monitor.
Yeah.
8 targets, 5 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah. I think it's something to monitor.
How long was the touchdown? Oh, yeah, he only had 27 yards going into the 4th quarter.
So did Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's something to monitor.
Yeah. Keep it on your radar. Gotcha. I appreciate you guys. You need to be talked out of it. Yeah, you're welcome, Jeff. There you go. We talked you out of it. Don't do it. Anything else before we get out of here? Tomorrow, Chargers and Chiefs. No Keenan Allen for me.
Are you guys worried about Eckler's usage at all from week 1?
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it at all because I don't have any shares of him. So.
Tyreek Hill, clearly the guy. We can move on to next week with that. They were doing everything they could to get him the ball. Jalen Waddle was saved by that touchdown.
That was one game I didn't monitor at all. Don't know why. I literally went back and watched highlights of pretty much every other game. Not the Dolphins Patriots.
Because McCorkle Jones.
I wouldn't you stamp him on any game. You're pushing me away from watching it.
I have no interest in watching learned this week that his name is McCorkle, and I just can't get over it. I just don't know.
You're throwing that around a lot.
What made you think of naming your kid McCorkle?
I don't know. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. So as always, we can't thank you guys enough for watching this, and we're about to put this out there. We're going to start putting this out as well as a podcast. You guys can find on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you guys get your podcast from. It will be there. Hopefully this episode is the first one that does that. Got to go through the process of doing so, but through Anchor. But we'll have our own RSS feed for the show and everything like that. So just stay up to date. You guys can follow us at AT412FF Show and at Around the 412. Both of those on Twitter for updates with that and anything else. Also tweet all your questions to us, and Joe will answer them no matter what time of day it is. And if you DM me, I'll give you his personal phone number. But other than that, for Smitty, for Joe, for Drew, until next week, we wish you guys the best of luck in your matchups, unless you're playing one of us. And we'll talk to you guys then. Bye-bye.
Peace.